Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, the story of Jad Bharata. Jad Bharata? Bharata Maharaj? Yes. Yes? You've heard. Okay. Quick. Jad Bharata was the third form from Bharata Maharaj. Bharata Maharaj, the Prabhupada was fond of saying, the planet was named after him. He was such an important person. Before it was known as Alavrati Varsha, and then after his life it became Bharat Varsha. So he's a very important person. They've named the planet after him. He was the son of one of the forms of the Lord, an incarnation in a certain category, named Rishabdev. Rishabdev. Rishabdev had a very interesting life. And one of the things that Rishabdev did, he had 100 sons, and the eldest of his 100 sons was Bharat. And Bharat became the next king. There's many details about Rishabdev's life, but there's Canto 5, Chapter 5, sometime in the future you might want to read. Fantastic instruction, fundamental instructions on how to live your life in transcendence, and not specifically how to be a good king, but specifically how to lead a transcendental life. Knowledge and detachment and devotion. There's elements of all three. Knowledge and detachment, that's universal for all Vedic instruction, Jnana Vairagya, and supported by bhakti, devotion. So service to the source of everything, the Supreme Person. And after instructing his sons, headed by Bharat Maharaj, it was his final instruction session. He left the kingdom, turned the kingdom over to Bharat, and some of his sons assisted Bharat in the administrative area. A number of other of the king's sons became brahmanas, and 9 of those sons, doesn't describe it here, but they became perfected souls. Perfected souls. Those same 9 sons that became perfected souls later they make their appearance in the 11th canto. They're known as the Prachetas. Not Prachetas. Navayogendras. Thank you. Navayogendras. Thank you. Navayogendras. So the Navayogendras, then there's a whole session where they're instructing another king at another time in another place. But that's his 100 sons. And then comes what Rishabdev did afterwards. After turning over the kingdom, he started going in the direction of amazing or extreme detachment. And he entered into a phase where he became like an Avadhuta. And many interesting things happened in that period. They knew who he was, but he was behaving towards the world with absolute detachment. Like an Avadhuta won't even recognize what's what. So that was, and then he left this world while engaging in austerities in a mountain, and the mountain was engulfed in flames of fire, and he disappeared after that. Meanwhile, while he's off being an Avaduta, Bharat Maharaj became the king. According to the Bhagavatam, he lived for a long time because it was a different age where people's duration of life was longer. He lived for a long time, and he was so 10,000 times 1,000. That's a lot of years. And then he turned his kingdom over to his sons, as his father did. He didn't become an Avaduta, but he went to the forest to perfect his life. And the description there is he engaged in worship of Narayana by chanting various mantras, including the Gayatri mantra. And he was worshipping Surya Narayana, the form of Narayana who's presiding in the sun planet, and other mantras. And he became, Bharat Maharaj, was experiencing transcendental ecstasy. In other words, he achieved the bhava stage. According to Rupa Goswami's teachings, there's 3 categories: practice, ecstasy, and love of God. Sadhana, practice. Practice became so perfect, he entered into the stage of bhava, spontaneous ecstasy, followed by prema. The transition from practice to bhava is a long road. The transition from bhava to prema is a short road. But he was in the bhava bhakti stage, living in the forest, doing ecstatic worship of the Supreme Lord alone, living like a renunciate, living very meekly. And the detail is, one fine day, after his morning bath in the sacred river, sitting by the side, preparing to chant his morning Gayatri, he saw something on the opposite side of the river. He saw a pregnant deer drinking water, looking this way, that way, as so if she would be attacked. And as she was drinking water, she heard a loud roar of a lion. She panicked. And she had a miscarriage because of that fear, and she jumped. And when she jumped, she landed in the river, which was swift moving, and she drowned, washed up on the shore somewhere downstream. Bharat Maharaj saw the whole thing. Now he's in the stage of Bhava Bhakti, and he was also a king. So kings by nature, they want to protect. So he went across the river and gathered up the newborn fawn and brought the fawn back to his side of the river to his ashram, and began caring for the fawn like a father and a mother and a this and a that. And he became absorbed, abhinivesh, he became absorbed in the deer. He was continuing with his practices for some time. But what happened was, he became so absorbed in the deer, it's an important detail, he became so absorbed in the deer that he started slackening in his spiritual practices. Now, he was almost at the stage of perfection. So it's one of those questions that people ask that know a little bit about this story. Is it possible? The answer is yes. Even at the stage of Bhava Bhakti, to again fall down? And the answer is yes, it happened in his case. There's an explanation of why it happened in his case. It doesn't give the detail, but our acharyas say some offense. Offense is serious business. Some offense, it doesn't identify what. He performed previously, or a previous life or something. And because of that offense, he was put in this difficult situation where he could continue. He didn't have to. It was a voluntary choice. he chose to slacken, and eventually he desisted from his spiritual practices. So it's possible, even from the Bhava Bhakti stage. So what happened was he continued absorbed in the deer, and he became less absorbed in the Supreme. And time passed, and he was just absorbed in, he was doing some things, but the submission unto the Supreme had changed. So we can do things, but it's not just doing things, say practices. It's the submission unto the Supreme that's the essence. So while doing those things, his mind was on the deer. If somebody's attached to someone or something, that's where the mind goes. Whatever one is attached to, that's where the mind goes. So even while doing this and that, his mind was on the deer. And he would imagine so many things about is the deer all right? The deer disappeared. Oh, maybe I offended the deer. Maybe this, maybe that. So he's just totally absorbed. As a transcendentalist might be absorbed in the Supreme. He had lost his elevated position by his own free will choice. And one evening, the deer wandered away, didn't come back. So he went out looking for the deer. And when he was out looking for the deer, by misfortune, he went in the wrong direction. He fell off a cliff and landed on the jagged rocks below. And his last thought was upon the deer. Oh dear. And so, according to this 5th canto description, he became a deer. The soul was transferred. The soul is transferred by the subtle body. So the makeup of the subtle body, whatever that is, carries the soul to its next destination. So he became a deer. However, because of his elevated life before dying, Supersoul gave him remembrance of everything. His past life as a great devotee. He wasn't just a yogi, he was a great devotee. He was a yogi also, but a great devotee. So Supersoul doesn't have to do this. It's exceptional. But Supersoul gave him full remembrance of everything in his previous life. Who he was, what he did, his practices, why he got distracted. So that, according to the 5th canto Bhagavatam, even as a deer, he was contemplating, I'm not going to do this again. I'm not going to make the same mistake again. And so forth and so on. He had the thoughts of a human being within his mind, although he had the body of a deer. So where in his deer body he was born, he went to another place where there were many sages, it was a sacred place, and he just hung out with the sages. He would peacefully stand when they were having their morning discussions and their chanting and their pujas and everything, and he would just immerse himself in that and then take remnants of their food. And he lived his life to the very end as a deer in full remembrance of the personality of Godhead. And his next life, he became a Brahmana, a son of a Brahmana. But like Maharaj Ambarish's father, he behaved externally as if he was a dullard or an avaduta or like a madman. This description, his father tried to train him in Brahminical duties, and he'd always do things backwards, and smile. And, so his father eventually gave up. He can't be trained. And that was just fine with him because he already knew what to do. Several things happened. This is just the storyline. Now, the third life. So, Bharat Maharaj, Adir, Jad Bharat, Jad, Dal, Jada, Bharata. That's how he became known. His brothers would taunt him because he was like a dullard, so they would poke him with sticks and say nasty things and treat him badly. Brothers weren't nice, although they were Brahmins. And others, same. There's a detailed section that describes some Kali worshippers decided to do something that's not even within Kali practices. They were going to make a human sacrifice of him. And they got down to they were ready to chop him with their chopper. And the goddess Kali burst out of the deity and chopped them, screaming, "This is devotee of my Lord." Finish them all. So those are some interesting details of his life as Jad Bharat. Then another situation came where the king at that time, the king of the province where he lived, King Rahugana was his name. Rahugana. King Rahugana. That's what I said. King Rahugana. So King Rahugana was a mixed devotee. And the mixed part was he was proud, arrogant. So one of the things that he did when traveling, which wasn't so uncommon, is he wouldn't travel by foot. He would be carried in a palanquin. And it required 4 palanquin carriers, and there were 3, and they couldn't find a 4th one. So they came across Jad Bharat. They thought, well, he's stout and strong, and he's, a bit of a dullard, but we can, engage him in carrying the king's palanquin. So he didn't say no, he didn't say yes, he just went along with the plan. So he became the 4th palanquin carrier. And everything was just fine until Jad Bharat saw some ants on the pathway. So he was carefully avoiding stepping on the ants, which resulted in the palanquin being carried unevenly, and the king was jostled in the palanquin. So he leaned over the side of the palanquin and said some nasty things. "You better carry this properly, or you're finished." And Jad Bharat said nothing. He carried, and it happened again. There were more ants on the pathway and jostled again. And though he said even more insulting things. "You lose your life. You don't know how to carry the king's palanquin. You lose your life." And hearing that, prior, Jad Bharat said nothing. Although he was fully conscious, I meant to mention this. He didn't say anything to anybody about anything. As if a dull person doesn't understand what somebody's saying, and they don't speak what they understand. With his father, he gave replies that was backwards. But with his brothers and with others, he said nothing. So all of a sudden, he decided to speak something to the king. So I'm going to read a verse that's toward the end of that whole, there's 2.5 chapters of Jad Bharat's transcendental knowledge given to the king. And after he does the first wave of the transcendental knowledge, the king gets off his palanquin, falls at the feet of Jad Bharat, and says, "You're not a dullard. You're a transcendentalist. And please accept my fullest apology. I didn't understand who you were. And I didn't understand what you said, although I knew it was way up there. So could you say it again in a way that I can more easily understand it? So lesson number 2, and then lesson number 3. And so what I'm going to read is after lesson number 3. It's towards the end of. It's very interesting how he describes. He has different methods each of those 3 times. The third one is a metaphor of a person lost in a forest and hearing sounds and being chased and being bitten and this and that, the forest of material existence, the suffering condition of a materialist that's just foolish, like the king. And he is explicit, you're like that. You're a foolish person. And the king took it because he knew that he was speaking to a transcendentalist. So I'm going to read a verse that's from Canto 5, Chapter 13, Text 24. This is Shukadeva Goswami is narrating all this. Shukadeva is narrating to Maharaj Parikshit about Jad Bharat and Rahugana's exchange. Text number 24. 5, 13, 24. My dear king, O son of Mother Uttara. Uttara was Maharaj Parikshit's mother. There were some waves of dissatisfaction in the mind of Jad Bharata due to his being insulted by King Rahugana, who made him carry his palanquin. But Jad Bharata neglected this, and his heart again became calm and quiet, like an ocean. Although King Rahugana had insulted him, he, that's Jad Bharat, was a great Paramahamsa. Being a Vaishnava, he was naturally very kind-hearted, and he therefore told the king about the constitutional position of the soul. He then forgot the insult of King Rahugana because King Rahugana pitifully begged pardon at his lotus feet. After this, he began to wander all over the earth just as before. And I'll read Prabhupada's purport and then discuss. In Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-21, Kapila Dev describes the symptoms of great personalities. Tatikshava karunika suradak sarvadehinam. A saintly person is certainly very tolerant. He is the friend of all living entities. Tatikshava karunika. He's a friend of all living entities, and he doesn't create enemies within this world. A pure devotee has all the qualities of a sadhu. A pure devotee has all the qualities of a sadhu. Jad Bharat is an example of this. Due to the material body, his senses were certainly agitated when he was insulted by King Rahugana. But later, due to the king's humble submission, Jad Bharata excused him. Now, previously, he's being taunted by his brothers. I mean, they're sticking sticks at him and saying things and insulting him, and that's his brothers. And then there's some other fellows that were going to kill him, and he didn't say anything. Now here it's the king, Rahugana, insulting him, and his mind, there were waves of displeasure going through his mind. Now it doesn't say what happened when they were trying to chop him or poke him or otherwise insult him. But he specifically here, some waves of dissatisfaction in the mind. Now, it's a lesson. That's why I'm picking this verse. It's a lesson that supposing you become situated in the Bhava Bhakti platform someday. Supposing you don't, and you're on the Sadhana Bhakti platform. Now, what do you do when there's a cause of disturbance? Generally, you get disturbed. there's had some discussion some while ago. The term dhira, D-H-I-R-A, dhira, means, it's in a verse, it's a phrase in the 6th chapter and other places in Bhagavad Gita. Dhira means one who remains undisturbed. Prabhupada's explanation: when you remain undisturbed while there is no cause for disturbance, that's not something wonderful. But when you remain undisturbed when there's cause of disturbance, that's something wonderful. Now, in this case, it's kind of in between. He became disturbed. Waves of dissatisfaction that's in the mind. So what to do when something is disturbing, whether it's insulting or whatever. Some misfortune comes, what do you do? When it's clear, at least from the external perspective, it's misfortune. There's different things one can do. Here's what Jad Bharat did. I mean, a starting point, let's go to Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is describing this world of duality. Dvandva, place of duality. Matra sparshas tu konteya, sitoshna sukha dukkha, those are opposites. Winter and summer season. Have you experienced cold like this in India? No. And this is Texas. There's other parts of the country that's much colder than this. I'm going to one of them on Sunday, to Boston. I won't be surprised if it's snowing. At least colder than this. So, what do? You tolerate. Tongues tatiksha, swabharata. So, tolerance is the first level. There's duality. Sometimes there's this, sometimes there's that. You dress warmly, and it's still cold, but you tolerate. Turn up the heat. It's a little comfortable inside, so you don't just stay inside. You have to go outside for classes and things. It's cold. You don't stay home because it's cold. You tolerate. Bundle up and you tolerate. The summers get pretty hot here too. You tolerate. That's entry level. Then another, let's go like up quite a bit, and there's Jnana Vairagya. I'm spirit soul, I'm not the body. The coldness is the body, is not me. So with knowledge there can be detachment from something unpleasant. Whatever it is, honor, dishonor, winter and summer season, pleasure and pain. Pain. Pain is pain. Pleasure is pleasure. It's subjective. One man, anyway, it's subjective. The reading of an experience of a sense is going to be different for different people, depending on many things, depending on the modes of nature and so many other circumstances, the type of body they have. But that's not you. So detachment through knowledge is another level up. But specifically here with Jad Bharat, he is being identified as a great Paramahamsa. Great Paramahamsa. Paramahamsa means a transcendental swan. Hamsa, Paramahamsa. Prabhupada's explanation is, a hamsa or a swan has a special capacity. The swan can go to a body of water and there's some milk floating in the water and they can take the milk and leave the water. There's something about their beak, at least certain kinds of swans have that capacity. So they can take something very wonderful even from a place that's not wonderful. Take gold from a filthy place because it's gold. This is Chanakya Pandit saying. And so forth. He was a Paramahansa. He's a great Paramahansa. And so his position wasn't just knowledge detachment. He wasn't a Jnani. He's a great devotee of the Lord. And there's a distinction. The distinction is the Jnani doesn't have shelter. And the devotee has shelter. Supposing there's a small child, and this is Prabhupada's example, the small child is walking down the street holding their father's hand. And here comes a dog, woof, woof, woof. The child looks at their father, who knows their father has always protected them, and they're smiling. Because they're feeling protected, because they have shelter. So one who has shelter, the mind can be settled. Even there's a cause, because you know that you're protected. That's a Paramahansa, or at least one who has shelter. And Paramahansa is like the best of all of that. They not only have shelter, they're immersed. And that was Jad Bharat, to tolerate so many things. Still, there were some waves of dissatisfaction. So imagine a pond. You've got a pond in the middle of the floor here, and you drop a pebble in this transparent, cool, like glass, smooth pond, and there's going to be some ripples. But even though there were ripples, and he felt waves of dissatisfaction with his mind, very quickly it became stabilized. And for some reason, when he wouldn't speak to other people who were taunting him, he chose to speak to King Rahugana. It doesn't say this, but just the intuitive sense is he saw something in Rahugana. So instead of speaking in other circumstances, he spoke in this circumstance. Not because he was disturbed, because he was now restored. He was equipoised again. Dhira. So one of the lessons here is even in the bhava stage, because that's where Jad Bharat was, even in the bhava stage, as he was in Bharat Maharaj, he was in the bhava stage, there's waves of dissatisfaction that may come in the mind. It's a common aspiration from the Vedas, from the Vedic paradigm, to achieve a stage of peace, shanti. My point is, even in the stage of peace or shanti, there may be waves of dissatisfaction. There's, in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a very long section of the 11th canto where Krishna is discussing with Uddhava. You know who's Uddhava? Krishna's cousin, like Arjuna is Krishna's cousin. Uddhava is Krishna's cousin. And Arjuna largely was with the other Pandava brothers in Indraprastha, then later Hastinapur. This cousin, Uddhava, was with Krishna all the time, from Mathura to Dwarka and everything in between. It's like he was very, very, very close cousin. And when Uddhava understood, because he was so close to Krishna, that Krishna is going to be leaving, he went to him, held his feet, pleaded with him, "Take me with you." Your pastimes are over. Take me with you. Don't leave me here. And then in the course of their exchange, something like 11, 12, some number of chapters of Krishna's instructing Uddhava. Not as many chapters as Bhagavad Gita, but similar. Very profound, very deep, very elaborate. And in one of those chapters, there's a discussion about a Brahmana named, it doesn't give his name, the Brahmana from Avanti, or Avantipur. Krishna points to the Brahmana from Avantipur to explain that even you become an elevated person, there's going to be insult, and there's going to be disturbance in the mind when there's insult, even a very elevated person. It's just echoing what's here. That's why I'm bringing it up. So what does Shanti mean? Shanti means you have ballast. There's something that restores the ripple effect when a pebble is thrown into the pond, or something extreme, some disturbance comes, and the mind, it's like the mind becomes dull. The senses perceive, the senses send a signal to the mind registers what the senses send as a signal, and there's feelings. The idea of Shanti is not to become numb, or to become a Jnani where you just turn the switch off, the duality switch, and you go to the transcendence place where I'm spirit, soul, the soul is eternal, I'm not the body, and so anything that's unpleasant out there is not me. I'm just detached because it's not me. Although that's true, that's not a place of shelter. Now, the Bhagavatam is giving us teachings in transcendence. And the teachings in transcendence take us to a place of shelter. It's not that there's no shelter with knowledge, but it's knowledge is eternal, Krishna is eternal, the knowledge of the Vedas is eternal. So there's a place of shelter there. However, the soul's hankering is not just something impersonal. The soul's hankering is something personal. That is a relationship, loving exchange. The advocacy of the Bhagavatam is that kind of shelter. So I like this concept, or the understanding. Say it one more time. Even in this Bhava Bhakti stage, there may be some waves of dissatisfaction in the mind. When I get to Boston, a topic I've been asked to speak on Sunday, when I get there, kind of prompted this one. The topic I've been asked to speak about is a condition of happiness from moment to moment. And in short, I'm going to say there's no such thing in the material field. In the material field, there's duality. And even the happiness is not real happiness. It's not happiness from moment to moment. There's duality. Sometimes, sukha, dukkha. Winter, summer season. It's not going to stop. Time factor is going to move, and it's going to be duality. So what about the spiritual plane? Happiness from moment to moment? Well, even in the Bhava Bhakti stage, there's waves of dissatisfaction. So what about the Prema stage? Is there waves of dissatisfaction? Then comes a whole other consideration, and it's a long discussion, or can be, but the short of the long discussion is, even when there's a seeming misfortune and there's disturbance in the mind of the pure devotee in relation to Krishna, it's an ecstasy. I'll do it again. An example that's given in Rupa Goswami's teachings is there's 5 primary rasas and 7 secondary rasas. The secondary rasas are the flowing of a wave that rises in a river and it subsides after some time. It's not there all the time. It rises and it subsides. And one of those waves that Rupa Goswami speaks about is sorrow. And a term that's used many, many, many times in Ramayana is sorrow. When Ram is banished for 14 years, there's all varieties of sorrow. And you read carefully, and you'll hear the word sorrow. I mean, it depends on the translation you have, but there's a Sanskrit term. And different persons experience different kinds of sorrow because they have different relationships and different personalities. So how is that happiness from moment to moment? It's happiness when it's understood that is a type of ecstasy. It's a type of ecstasy that increases attachment, like separation, increases the feelings of attachment. When lover and beloved are separated, their feelings of love for one another intensify, even more so than when they're together. That's a transcendental teaching. So happiness from moment to moment is to be situated in transcendence. But it doesn't look like happiness. When Krishna was in the coils of the Kaliya serpent, it didn't look like happiness. And so forth. When Krishna knocked over the Arjuna trees in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj, there was panic. It wasn't happiness. The external is not happy, but it's a wave that rises and then subsides. And that wave that rises is connected with the sthayi bhava, or the permanent ecstasy of that particular relationship that one has. In other words, the cowherd boys, Krishna's cowherd boyfriends, they felt one thing. Balaram felt something else. Nanda felt something else. Yasoda felt something else. There's varieties, but they're secondary ecstasies resting upon the primary, their relationship with Krishna, sthayi bhava. So that's going to be my discussion when I reach Boston. I'll expand it a little bit. Conclusion. In order to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, we need a guide, because otherwise we'll misunderstand it, guaranteed. And one of the guides is Rupa Goswami, because Rupa Goswami gives principles, and then we can, once we understand the principles, we can apply the principles to anything. It's kind of like what you guys do in the college. You understand something, and you use that something. You may add another something to that something, and you come up with a new idea, innovative idea. But it's just principles. You understand the principles, and you connect principles, and you can do something, for others. So Rupa Goswami gives the principles of love, bhakti rasa. And how does bhakti rasa work? And what's it resting upon? So the Bhagavatam can be looked at through that lens, and it's really nice. And if you don't have that lens, you can still appreciate these are wonderful descriptions, but a deeper and fuller experience will come when you have that lens given by Rupa Goswami, which was given to him by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then we can see things that you couldn't otherwise see. I mean, just for example, Prabhupada's example is a car mechanic. Supposing you have a car problem, it won't start. You call a mechanic, Prabhupada's saying, he touches some wires, vroom, vroom, it starts. Because he can see things that we can't see. He understands things that we don't understand. And that's his expertise or skill. And we also live our lives with different expertises and different skills. And we may be able to see things that others can't see. So if with the help of Rupa Goswami's teachings and applying those teachings to circumstances within the Bhagavatam, it becomes all the more reliable. Bhakti Rasa Amrita. And it becomes oceanic. Bhakti Rasam Rita Sindhu. It's an ocean of nectar. Bhakti Rasa. Go with that lens, read Srimad Bhagavatam, and the experience is fantastic. Hare Krishna. You're just in time for the conclusion of the class. But you can listen to the discussion, if there's some discussion. Any comments? Or questions? Yeah.
Bhagavatam generally speaks of elevated devotees, and here in this example also we saw Jadabharat was in the platform of Bhagavatam. So for them to tolerate provoking situations.
This isn't just tolerance.
Sorry?
This is more than tolerance. I'm interrupting. He's beyond the tolerance stage. Keep going.
Yeah. So, but what we see is like in our lives, as an aspiring devotee or a struggling devotee, when intolerances or provoking situations come, we tend to succumb to them, and we act. Uh, we act what we don't believe in.
It amplifies. Something small gets bigger.
Yeah. But again, what I see is like Prabhupada disciples in their initial stages of their bhakti during 70s and 80s. I read Leelamrit, I saw devotees, they tolerated so much for the pleasure of Prabhupada.
Yes.
So, like, I want to know, like, what was their consciousness, or how did they achieve that?
Oh, it's all over. The map is full. There's different people. So you can't just put it in a bucket and that's it. So different experiences. And so the spiritual trajectory of each of us is different. The personality characteristics of each of us is different. So it's all over the place. Now you're looking for principles, and the principle is one could say a sense of having taken shelter of a very capable and caring and affectionate person. We hanker for that. And that was found. No, Prabhupada was not, he was not living in our home. He was all over the world. But we would hear about his activities around the world, and we were engaged in activities that he wanted us to do. It wasn't like a lot of personal instruction. Do this, you can do that. So in some cases that was there, but the whole of the organization was the oceanic, merciful, compassionate, wise Father who we felt were in his care. Whatever happens, it's going to be okay. I mean, that's the big picture. Then there's blips on the screen and so many other things. People doing weird stuff. And, Prabhupada wasn't a firefighter, but he gave shelter to all of us. And that corrected the tilting ship, at a small or a medium or a big scale. We had a good captain on the ship. We felt that. So we're crossing the sea, and we have a good captain. We had implicit faith. Most of us, those that endured, had implicit faith and wanted to assist him. He had a mission. We wanted to assist him in whatever way we could. That's shelter. It's how we can endure. It's a principle less advanced than Bharat Maharaj, but the same principle. How's that for an answer? There's not a cookie cutter answer to all of this. What do you think? What do you think? Do you have something further on that one?
But again, now also what I see is like whatever those devotees achieved at that time, it's far more unimaginable as compared to current situation. Like initially those devotees, even though they had very less experience in bhakti, still they were able to achieve so much.
Well, two things. One of those two things is, as an acharya in our disciplic line, Prabhupada himself achieved things that no one has achieved before in the history of the world's religion. No one has achieved, in modern or previous. Therefore, it's implicit, or it's logical to say, Krishna, Prabhupada said it himself, my Guru Maharaj has sent so many persons to assist me. So, and those persons were empowered by supercharged, powerful person. So they were able to do things that ordinary people are not able to do. Or ordinarily people would not be able to do because of that surcharged empowerment. Because he was such a person in this world that was charged. He was able to charge others, and they were sent as special persons. In Prabhupada's words, by my Guru Maharaj, to assist him. That's how he humbly saw it. We certainly didn't see ourselves that way, but that's one part of the answer. To achieve that the unprecedented, persons were empowered in an unprecedented way. And second is, there are some newer generation persons that are exceptional. And it has my perception, at least, is it rests more on their past samskaras, their past lifetimes, plural, of devotional service. And so they're fit vessels to receive Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy and next generation Prabhupada's mercy, because they have a big vessel to carry all that mercy. And they have the sanskaras to work with it properly. How powerful was Bhaktisiddhanta? And yet, during his time at least, what he generated didn't last for so long. So the real test, my response to your question, this is part 3 actually, is persons who are seeing and feeling what you're seeing and feeling should pick up the load. And if one does so in the right mood of service, not in the right mood of fixing things, in the mood of service, then it's possible to continue and manifest extraordinary things. And say, if that does happen, extraordinary things will continue to happen. And the other side, if it doesn't happen, things will start to sag. As is natural in a chain of events in world history. Something rises, and after some time it subsides. Someone else? I can't hear you.
You talked about the bhava at the end of life with respect to Bharat Maharaj. The question is, why did Ajamil get a second chance? His bhava was in his son Narayan, but Vishnu Dutas came for him and he got a second chance. But Bharat Maharaj had a different consequence.
There's different ways of answering that. One significant way of answering that, not the only way of answering that, is according to our acharyas, it doesn't say what he did, but somewhere preceding this becoming overly attached to the deer was the result of an offense. The opportunity presented itself and he chose according to his offense to desist. and offense and the consequences of offense are more severe than sin. What Ajamila did was sin. And lots and lots and lots. But sin can be dissolved more quickly than reactions to offense. They're far more insidious. And the second chance that Ajamila got was in the same body, but it doesn't mean the second chance that Bharat Maharaj got, although it was a different body, the body of a deer, he was given full remembrance of everything. And all the learning and all the devotion, because it was a lot of years, 10,000 times 1,000. That's a lot of years to be on an elevated platform of bhakti. So it didn't just dissipate. So to say that he didn't get a second chance, whereas Ajamila did, I would disagree with he didn't get a chance, although Ajamila did. The circumstance was different, for sure. And here's a third point. Ajamila, because of his childhood practice of being a Vaishnava Brahmin, when he called his son Narayana, according to Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, he thought of the original Narayan, not his son Narayan. So when death was coming, he was thinking of the original Narayan. Whereas Bharat Maharaj was thinking of the deer, not Narayan. And thus a different outcome. Other? Louder. You have the button on? No? It's not on at all. Not working. Do we have...
Should we tolerate those who try to insult our family members and think that it may be a karmic reaction, or should we confront them?
Well, there's more than two options. And so much depends on the circumstance to answer this question. There's not a two-option set of choices. Confront them is not necessarily, the only other option besides you tolerate. It depends upon the nature of the offense, it depends upon the circumstance, it depends on so many variables what to do. So the answer is you need more options than those two. And you need a little, discriminating capacity. So it depends on my answer is, intelligence needs to be applied to the circumstance with all the variegated aspects of you, the relationship, and so forth and so on. Is that it? Okay. Something else in the room? You three in the back there. You have anything you want to add to this? Okay. Yes? You want to speak into the microphone? It's right in front of you.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So regarding that Ajamila pastime, is it like I was hearing or reading somewhere that Ajamila got the association of Vishnu Dutas that kind of gave us the intense bhakti to him? Is that like the because he got the association of Vishnu Dutas, but even though for a shorter period of time, that really helped him in making progress. So
It's not a 10, but it's not a 0.
Okay.
Not a 0, but it's not a 10.
Yeah.
They've got classes?
Yeah.
Okay. See you later. Thanks for coming. Hare Krishna. It's an interesting, I've never heard this being spoken by others, or read it anywhere either. Minimally, what he had been doing from the time that he named his smallest child Narayana was Namabhas. So Namabhas, Namabhas, Namabhas. And the check, let's take the Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur example. The sins were Namabhas chanting results in reactions of sins being nullified. And then as the Yamadutas came, he, in fear, started thinking, or at least for a moment, thought of the original Narayan. And that's the impetus. So their presence of the Yamadutas, not the Vishnu Dutas, the presence of the Yamadutas brought remembrance of the original Narayan. So in the auspicious presence of the Yamadutas, certainly auspiciousness is created that nurtures, but it's not, that's in itself the reawakening of his bhakti was because they're bhakti carriers. His bhakti was reawakened. So it's a nice idea. I've not heard it. I've not read it. It's a nice idea. But my prior understanding to this idea is he got hit the reset button. And he made by the hearing of transcendental knowledge in that circumstance and being protected. Now they didn't. They could have stayed and give him further instructions. But when the scene was over, they just departed, leaving him in a situation where he had to reevaluate. Who am I? What's my life meant for? And it wasn't resting upon their presence, it was or anything they specifically had to say, but his past and the recollection of Lord Narayan. Those are my thoughts on that question.
Thank you.
Personally, I don't, I'm reluctant, or maybe even stronger, I'm uncomfortable with coming up with perhaps and maybe. I'm very comfortable with hearing from our acharyas and trying to understand the why and the wherefore, the subtleties of what our acharyas have to say. I'm a little uncomfortable, reluctant to say, yeah, that's a nice speculation. I think that's a good one. Let's go with that one. So I want to hear from authorities. So that if you can ask that person who said this, could you refer to some scriptural authority behind this statement? Because it sounds interesting. Is there scriptural authority behind this statement?
Sure.
Okay. I think we're done. Srila Prabhu, you have something? Okay, one more. Give him the microphone.
So Maharaj, like in the outside world,
Bring the whole stand closer. It's easier.
in the outside world, in our school or in our families, in relatives also, everyone teaches us how to be shrewd, how to be, like the Prahlad school, how it was taught, how to be diplomatic, how to
Yes,
make the
yeah.
best out of everything. But in our devotee circle, what we hear from Guru and sadhus is that we have to be tolerant, and you have to accept things as a mercy of Lord, and you have to tolerate to purify yourself. So, and at times what we learn from outside, we try to bring it inside devotee circle, and we see devotees with that vision also.
I've seen it too.
Yeah. So Maharaj, how to put that margin?
Well, it's not two things. It's not, in all circumstances, be silent. Tolerate does not equal being silent. Tolerate means you don't let your mind become disturbed, and then in that detached state of mind, you should consider what's the best way to serve Krishna in this circumstance. And it may be the best thing in a circumstance. You got a little brainstorm list. When you're practiced at it, you can do your brainstorm list quickly. But if you don't do the brainstorm list, it's just going to be a knee-jerk reaction, which may be shut up, or tolerate, or retaliate, or other material responses. But if you're in a Vaishnava mood, then you're considering what's the best way to serve Krishna. And you've got a little list, or you may not even know at that time, but then you meditate on it over time, because some people process things a little slowly. And then you do whatever is the best thing for serving, because that's your foundation. It may be, may not be, but it may be something that you heard from your upbringing that's on a different list that would be the best way to serve Krishna. But then when you use that, it's for the service of Krishna. So your question specifically was, how do you cut the line? And the answer I'm giving is, you take the tolerance is the first step, but it doesn't stop there. You go to a mode of goodness reflective space. And quite likely, I'm not seeing things the way that Vyasadeva would see things. So let me sit with it for a little bit, depending on the circumstance. My perception is not necessarily matching reality. because I'm living my own autobiography. So let me, acknowledge that one. Now, I want to be in Krishna's service. That's what I meant to be, in Krishna's service. What are some of the best, in this circumstance? It can happen quickly. It may take a while, but you practice, it becomes more quickly. You consider what's best in a given circumstance. Ways to serve Krishna. And then you select from the menu as best you can. And if it's not clear, you may want to just pause out until it becomes more clear. But the thing that becomes amplified by that or other circumstances is, I'm meant for pleasing Krishna. If that's the principle by which you'll lead your life, you're going to make better choices. And you'll probably see more options than the narrow list of what I learned growing up. The modes of nature lessons. That it? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.